This is why no one will ever love you, Hannah.
My name is Hannah, and this is the story of how I was reborn in the ice. The cold of the Vermont snow wasn't the worst part. It wasn't the biting wind that felt like tiny needles on my skin, or the searing pain of my hair being ripped from my scalp. The worst cold, the kind that freezes you from the inside out, was in my father's eyes. It was the night I went into labor during the worst blizzard of the decade. As my body tried to bring a new life into the world, my own family decided I was an inconvenience worth throwing away. I can still feel the rough wool of my father, Arthur's, coat against my cheek as he dragged me across the porch. The world was a blur of white snow and black hatred. "You will not ruin this night," he hissed, his voice barely audible over the storm. His words weren't for me, but for my sister, who was inside, warm and safe, worried only about her live stream's internet connection. He threw me off the steps, and I landed in a snowbank, the shock of the impact sending a crippling contraction through my entire body. I was 38 weeks pregnant, alone in a blizzard, and the only home I knew had just slammed its door in my face. If you have ever felt a cold that had nothing to do with the temperature, a cold that came from betrayal, just take a second to hit that like button so I know I'm not alone in this. That night, time seemed to stop altogether, and I had to learn how to survive. That house, the one with the dark wood and the perpetually cold floors, hadn't been my home for years. I only came back because I had nowhere else to go. 6 months earlier, I had a life. I had a small apartment in Burlington, a promising start at an architecture firm, and I had Noah, my Noah. He had this laugh that could make the grayest Vermont sky feel like sunshine. We were going to build our own house, a small one with a huge window facing the mountains. Then, one icy afternoon, a patch of black ice on the highway stole him from me, leaving me a widow before I was even a wife. My father, Arthur, said it was my duty to come home. My mother, Carol, just wrung her hands and said it was for the best. But it wasn't a rescue. It was a surrender. I became a ghost in my own childhood home. My grief a quiet, inconvenient stain on their pristine family portrait. The star of that portrait was, and always it had been, my younger sister, Madison. While I spent my days folding tiny baby clothes that Noah would never see, Madison spent hers curating a life that didn't exist. Her entire world was a screen, filled with staged photos of her meditating in expensive yoga pants and vapid captions about authenticity. My parents saw a prodigy. I saw a black hole of narcissism. I was the tragic, silent burden. She was the bright, noisy future. It's a strange feeling, being the outsider in the one place you're supposed to belong. If you're watching this right now from a place you call home, tell me one word that describes it. Is it safe? Complicated? Loud? I'm just curious what home means to you all. For me, it had become a shoj. The first real contraction hit me like a physical blow. It wasn't a cramp. It was a deep, powerful wave that stole my breath and made the floorboards seem to tilt beneath my feet. I gripped the edge of the kitchen table, my knuckles white against the dark wood. The blizzard was raging outside, rattling the window panes, but the storm inside me was just beginning. "Arthur!" I called out, my voice sounding weak against the noise from the living room. Madison was watching some political pundit shout on television, a habit she'd picked up to sound informed without ever having to read a book. My mother, Carol, was likely in her sunroom, even though the sun had set hours ago, probably with a glass of Chardonnay and a noise machine to block out the world. I tried again, louder this time. a thread of panic weaving into my voice. "Arthur, it's starting. I think I need to go to the hospital." He finally appeared in the doorway, not with concern, but with pure annoyance etched on his face, like I had just tracked mud on his clean floor. "Do you have any idea what time it is?" he snapped. "Madison is about to go live. She has a brand sponsorship tonight." I stared at him, breathless from another wave of pain. "I'm in labor," I managed to say. He scoffed, a truly ugly sound. "Couldn't you have held it in? Your timing, as always, is impeccable." He didn't see a daughter in pain. He saw a problem, an interruption to the only show that mattered in that house, the Madison show. "It doesn't work like that," I gasped, my teeth gritted against the pain. "You always do this," Arthur muttered, turning his back on me. "Such a drama queen." His dismissal was a blade in my heart. I tried to make it to the front hallway on my own, shuffling my feet, leaning against the wall for support. But another contraction, sharper and more brutal than the last, brought me to my knees. Tears of pain and humiliation stung my eyes. "Please," I cried out, my voice a raw whisper. "Arthur, please." That's when I heard her door swing open. It was Madison, holding a makeup brush like a scepter. "Are you kidding me right now?" she shrieked, her voice a shrill siren. "I have my brand interview in 10 minutes. You are doing this for attention. You always ruin everything." "It's not for attention," I choked out from the floor. "The baby, he's coming." That was all it took. My father stormed back into the hall, his face a mask of pure fury. "You've already taken enough from this family," he growled. Before I could even process his words, he grabbed my arm and yanked me to my feet. A bolt of agony shot through my back. "Stop!" I screamed. He didn't. He dragged me by the wrist, and when I stumbled on the welcome mat, his hand tangled in my hair, pulling with savage force. My knees scraped against the cold tile. He wasn't my father anymore. He was a monster. He flung the front door open, letting the roaring wind and snow flood the hallway. He dragged me out onto the porch and with one final hateful shove, threw me down the steps into the unforgiving snow. At that moment, I learned that evil isn't always a stranger with a mask. Sometimes, it's the face you've known your whole life. If you believe what he did in that moment was beyond any forgiveness, I just want you to type the word justice in the comments below. Lying there in the snow, the world was a dizzying mix of white flakes and black despair. The pain was a constant, roaring fire in my lower back, but a different kind of agony was spreading through my chest, the ice-cold realization of being utterly alone. I looked up at the house, my house, now a fortress with me on the wrong side of the walls. For a split second, a curtain in the upstairs window moved. I saw my mother's silhouette, her hand pressed against the glass. Our eyes might have met. I'll never know for sure. I saw her hesitate, a shadow of a person, before the curtain fell back into place, plunging the window into darkness. She had seen me. She knew, and she chose to do nothing. Her inaction was louder than my father's rage. Then the front door, which was still slightly ajar, opened wider. It was Madison. She didn't look concerned or even angry anymore. She just looked amused. She held up her phone, its screen glowing in the dark, and I had the sickening feeling she was still live. "This," she said, her voice dripping with mock sympathy for her online audience, "is what happens when you crave drama more than peace." Then she looked right at me, a cruel smirk on her face. and laughed. A short, sharp sound that was swallowed by the wind. "This is why no one will ever love you, Hannah." The door slammed shut, the final click echoing like a gunshot. And then there was only the wind, the snow, and the relentless, rhythmic agony of my body, trying to give birth in a frozen wasteland. I don't know how long I lay there. Seconds felt like minutes, minutes like hours. The world started to go fuzzy at the edges, the howling of the wind sounding distant, almost peaceful. A part of me, a tired, broken part, thought that maybe this was it. Maybe it was easier to just let the snow cover me, to let the cold take the pain away. Then, two beams of light cut through the swirling darkness. They swept across the snow, and for a moment I thought I was hallucinating. The lights stopped. A car door slammed, and a figure came running towards me, a dark shape against the blinding white. "Oh my God! Oh my God! Are you okay?" A woman's voice called out. As she got closer, I recognized her. It was Sarah, the nurse who lived in the house next door, the one with the meticulously kept garden in the summer. She knelt beside me, her hands surprisingly warm on my icy cheek. Her training kicked in instantly. There was no panic in her voice, only focused urgency. "Hannah, are you in labor?" I couldn't speak. I just nodded, my teeth chattering too hard for words. She didn't ask questions. She just acted. She somehow got me to my feet and half carried me to her car, cranking the heat up until it blasted my frozen skin. As she fumbled for her phone to call 911, she glanced back at my house, dark and silent. Her voice trembled with rage. "That man, your father. I saw him, Hannah. My porch security camera points right at your driveway. It must have caught everything." She didn't know it then, but with those words, she hadn't just saved my life. She had given me a weapon. The rest of that night was a blur of fluorescent lights, beeping machines, and the calm, steady voices of doctors and nurses. It was a sterile, controlled chaos that felt a world away from the organic, hateful chaos I had just escaped. And then, in the quiet hours of the morning, as the blizzard finally exhausted itself outside, he arrived. He was small, screaming, and utterly perfect. They placed him on my chest, and in that moment, the entire world fell away. All the pain, the betrayal, the icy cold, it all vanished. All that existed was the impossible warmth of his tiny body against mine, and the fierce, protective love that roared through me like a wildfire. He had his father's eyes, Noah's eyes. Looking at him, I knew I couldn't give him a life tainted by the bitterness of my family. He deserved sunshine, not shadows. I decided to name him Asher. In Hebrew, it means blessed and happy. It was a promise, a declaration. His life would not be defined by the legacy of that cold, dark house. It would be his own. While Asher slept in a small plastic bassinet beside my bed, I took out my phone. My screen was filled with missed calls and frantic texts from Arthur and Carol. Without reading a single one, I opened my contacts. I found my father's name, held my finger down, and pressed block. I did the same for my mother, and for Madison. With each tap, I felt a chain breaking. The silence that followed wasn't their punishment for me anymore. It was my power over them. Names are so powerful, aren't they? They're a piece of our story. If you feel like sharing, I would love to know if there's a special meaning or story behind your own name. Let me know in the comments below. That was the first day of my new life. Sarah drove me from the hospital, not to the cold farmhouse, but to a plain brick building with the words, Green Mountain Women's Shelter, in simple black letters over the door. The initial high of survival and the fierce love for Asher began to fade, replaced by the crushing weight of reality. I was homeless, jobless, and a new mother, all at once. The shelter was safe, clean, and the women there were kind, but their eyes held the same tired story of escape as mine. The nights were the hardest. Asher would cry, a helpless, piercing sound, and my own exhaustion was a physical weight. Postpartum depression wrapped around me like a thick gray fog. In that fog, my resolve wavered. I remember one night, around 3 a.m., holding a screaming Asher, my body aching, my mind screaming that I couldn't do it. My phone was in my hand, my thumb hovering over my mother's unblocked number. I was so close to calling, to begging, to trading my freedom for a warm bed and a moment of rest. I was ready to surrender. Then, the woman in the bunk across from me, a Christian woman named Maria, who never spoke about the bruises that faded on her arms, got up. She didn't say a word. As she just walked to the small kitchenette, heated a cup of water, put a chamomile tea bag in it, and placed it on the nightstand next to me. She gave my shoulder a gentle squeeze and went back to bed. That simple, silent act of kindness was everything. It was the lighthouse beam cutting through my fog. It told me I wasn't just a burden, I was a person worthy of care. I put my phone down and never thought of making that call again. That cup of tea was the fuel that started my engine. The fog of depression began to lift, replaced by a cold, clear focus. I was done being a victim. I was done waiting to be rescued. I started to build. My days were a blur of sheer will. I took early morning shifts washing dishes at a diner that let me keep Asher in his carrier in the back. I learned to budget from a shelter volunteer, making every dollar stretch until it screamed. At night, after Asher was asleep, I didn't rest. I studied. I found a state-funded tech program that offered training in software development and, most importantly, provided free on-site childcare. It became my obsession, my single point of focus. But I was building something else in those quiet hours, too. In secret. Sarah had given me a copy of the security footage from her camera on a USB drive. I bought a cheap secondhand laptop and created a folder on a secure, encrypted cloud server. I named it the Asher file. It started with that video, a silent, grainy film of my father's cruelty. Then I added to it screenshots of the dozens of missed calls, the venomous voicemails I never listened to but saved, a meticulous, dated timeline of every event, every broken promise, every cruel word. It wasn't about plotting revenge anymore. It was about forging armor. It was about ensuring that if their world ever tried to crash into mine again, I would be the one holding the shield, and the truth would be my weapon. I worked on it in silence, my own secret project. I think we all have things we build in the quiet when no one is watching. What's one dream, one goal that you are quietly working towards? Let's fill the comments with our silent ambitions, big and small. 2 years passed. 2 years of relentless work, study, and the quiet joy of watching Asher grow. I graduated from my program and landed a junior developer job. For the first time, I could breathe. I had my own small apartment, and on Asher's second birthday, I posted a single photo online. Just him and me in a park, him laughing as he chased a stray leaf. I didn't tag anyone or write a caption, but I knew they were watching. I knew because less than an hour later, the attack came. Madison, whose influencer career had predictably fizzled out into a swamp of bitterness, must have seen my small happiness as a personal insult. She posted a long, tearful video to the town's community Facebook group. It was a masterpiece of manipulation, using old photos and cleverly edited clips to paint me as a mentally unstable, jealous sister who had abandoned her loving family for drama. She framed herself as the victim, heartbroken by my cruelty. A few years ago, that would have destroyed me, but I wasn't that person anymore. A former high school classmate who always despised Madison's arrogance sent me a screenshot of the post with a simple message. Just so you know. Madison had set a trap, but she didn't realize I was the one holding the map. I logged into an anonymous email account I'd created years ago. I attached one file, the raw, unedited security footage from that night. I sent it to the group's moderators with a single sentence. This is the context for Madison's video. I hit send, turned off my computer, and went to go read Asher a bedtime story. I didn't need to watch the fire. I had just provided the fuel and the match. The fallout was nuclear. In a small Vermont town, reputation is currency, and my family was now bankrupt. The video I leaked didn't need commentary. It spoke for itself. The same classmate who had warned me sent me another message a week later. The group moderators pinned the video to the top of the page. No one is on Madison's side. Madison deleted her account, but the damage was done. The story spread like wildfire through the town. The story of the respected Arthur who threw his pregnant daughter into a snowstorm. His contracting business, built on handshakes and local trust, dried up overnight. People would cross the street to avoid my mother at the grocery store. The perfect family portrait they had guarded so fiercely had been burned to the ground, and they were left standing in the ashes. About a year later, the inevitable called home. I didn't recognize the number, but I recognized the voice instantly, though it was stripped of its usual authority. It was Arthur. "Hannah," he said, skipping any greeting. "We're selling the house." He sounded tired, defeated. He explained that there were some old legal documents, something to do with the original family deed, that required the signature of all direct descendants. He said it was a formality for the buyers. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He wasn't apologizing. He was asking for a favor, a transaction. After all those years, after everything he had done, he still saw me not as a daughter to be loved, but as a tool to be used. "We need you to come," he said, his voice cracking just a little. "It's the only way to close the deal." I didn't answer immediately. I just let the silence hang in the air, a silence that I now owned completely. "I'll be there on Saturday," I said, my voice even, and hung up before he could reply. When I walked through that front door, I wasn't the broken girl who had been dragged out of it. I was a woman who had built herself from scratch. The house seemed smaller, the air thick with unspoken failure. Arthur, Carol, Madison, they were ghosts haunting their own home, their faces pale and drawn. My father slid a stack of papers across the polished dining table. "Here," he mumbled, not meeting my eyes. "Just sign at the bottom." I looked at the papers, then at their tired, expectant faces. I didn't reach for the pen. Instead, I pulled my tablet from my bag, opened a file, and placed it on the table, turning the screen to face them. I pressed play. The grainy, silent footage of that night filled the screen, me on my knees. My father's hand in my hair, the shove, the snow. I let it play in a loop. "You asked for my signature on the family record. I said, my voice quiet but clear in the silent room. That video, that is my signature. It is the only true thing left in this house. It's the legacy you wrote for me. I stood up, leaving the tablet on the table, the video of their shame playing on for eternity. I walked out without looking back. Later that day, I sat with Asher in the park, watching him try to count the stars as they began to appear in the twilight sky. He laughed, a pure, happy sound that echoed in the crisp evening air. That was it. That was the only sound that mattered. That laughter is my legacy. Not a house, not a name. I walked out of their story and into my own. If you believe in the power to build your own life, to write your own ending no matter the beginning, hit that subscribe button. Let's build a community of people who turn their scars into stars, together.